Saints are expected to sign former Chiefs safety Tyrann Mathieu. Though Mathieu will turn 30 later on this month, he remains a beast. First team All-Pro honors in 2019 and 2020, was voted to the Pro Bowl last year. He played 5 seasons with the Cardinals, just 1 with the Houston Texans, but the best stretch of his career, at least so far, has been the last 3 years in Kansas City. 13 of his 26 career interceptions, 2 out of his 3 career pick sixes have come with the Chiefs. He was also a team captain 2019 on the team that won the Super Bowl. And this, like we said, is news that's welcomed, especially around these parts. This is a hometown guy who's 30 years old, or not even 30 years old, still incredibly productive, and he fills a position of need.
This one kind of always felt inevitable, didn't it?
A little bit.
For a long time. But that doesn't sour the excitement literally at all. Yeah, all the Pro Bowls and the All-Pro, that's great too. He's also got just immeasurable value on postseason experience, including a Super Bowl championship, playing for many more Super Bowls as well. He fits the culture that the Saints want in that locker room, and he bolsters an already stacked secondary. I mean, when you have a shutdown corner like Marshawn Lattimore on the outside, you saw the emergence of Paulson Adebo last year. Oh, by the way, you still have Bradley Roby. You brought in Marcus May to also be a safety, but you got to wait and see kind of with some injuries there. C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Oh, yeah, Tyrann Mathieu. Draft Alontae Taylor. I mean, they are stacked in that secondary right now, and specifically at the safety position with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Tyrann Mathieu. It's a great day to be a New Orleans Saint when you see news like this. And, look, it's obviously great. Everybody's going to be biased because he played at LSU and is one of the best players at LSU in LSU history, but just the story as well. Everybody knows how Tyrann's time at LSU ended and how he's rebuilt himself through the league and now gets to come home. And again, like I said, it always kind of felt inevitable, but it doesn't diminish excitement or the importance of the move at all.
No, I need to know how Jim Hawthorne feels too. Now that people are making fun of me for how I just said Tyrann's name, he had some legendary calls, and I'm sure he's curious to see how he'll do on the Saints. But yeah, man, I agree with everything you said. Like we said, position of need, that might be an understatement. I was legitimately a little bit upset after they did not draft the safety, but I was also a little bit hopeful because maybe that meant that they were confident about Tyrann Mathieu coming back home. And just his skill set, what you just said, the 2 names, him and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think that's going to afford Dennis Allen the opportunity to do some really cool things. Those are 2 really versatile guys, and now hopefully you could play Chauncey Gardner-Johnson exclusively in the nickel, where we know he thrives. And like you said, the Saints are really deep at secondary. They drafted a cornerback as well, which we'll talk about in the next segment. But when you combine everything you brought in, Marcus May, now Mathieu, which some people would argue is better than what you had before in Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams. Maybe that's a debate we'll have later, but you are deep when you talk about P.J. Williams coming off the bench, plus the draft picks. Bradley Roby is somebody that a lot of people forget. Really love what the Saints are doing in the secondary, and that's after I was really worried that they lost Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams. So Tyrann Mathieu coming back, the LSU angle of it is really cool, but just based on what the Saints needed, this was almost a necessary sign.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, you mentioned the cornerback that drafted Alontae Taylor. I mean, he also had some versatility to maybe play safety, but you don't need that now. I mean, you don't need that now. To be able to replace Marcus Williams, who for how his career started and what he's remembered for more often than not is obviously missing the tackle on the Minneapolis Miracle, but that was his rookie year. I mean, after that, the safety that he developed into, I mean, you saw the contract he just signed. He's one of the best safeties in the league. So to lose him, to have him walk in free agency, to be able to replace him with somebody the caliber of Tyrann Mathieu, Super Bowl champion, All-Pro, Pro Bowl, to be able to replace that, that's pretty seamless. And to be able to find that in a hometown guy where the culture fits, which is all of that, it feels like a slam dunk. I mean, you obviously want to see it get out there on the field and play, and again, it's hard because we've all seen Tyrann Mathieu play so much football here, and we know what he's about. We know the type of player he is. Everyone's going to be so excited that you would just say, man, slam dunk, but and you maybe want to be cautioned a little bit after that, like, wait a minute. I don't want to be cautioned. I think it's a slam dunk. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to dominate. Just a game changer, another game changer, game breaker in this Saints defense, which, look, Mario, how often have we talked about it? That's how they've won. Even with Sean Payton still there, they were winning with defense the last, half decade? That's what the Saints have been doing. This allows you to continue to do that because you're going to have to, with not that you didn't get better on offense, but you're still there's more question marks there on the offensive side of the ball than there are defensively for the Saints. Tyrann Mathieu coming in just bolsters the defense and eliminates even a few question marks that might have been remaining.
That's a good point, because I still do have a couple of questions about the tight end and the running back position. We will talk about that when we talk about the draft as a whole, but just on the surface, looking at having a start in secondary, Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, Paulson Adebo, who really flashed as a third-round pick last year, and Marcus Lattimore, like you said, that's how they've been winning the last couple of years. It's clear that this team has an identity, and offensively, hopefully they're able to do enough, but the heart and soul of this team will be on defense, and that's just the on-field production we're talking about getting excited about. Imagine the energy that a secondary with Tyrann Mathieu and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson are going to bring to the field game in and game out. These are two guys that kind of went viral for getting in the face of Tom Brady and talking a little bit of smack when their team was beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers nonetheless. So the Saints right now, I would say, have the swaggiest secondary in the NFL.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's something else I'll say about Tyrann Mathieu. Is first thing I said in the segment was this felt inevitable. And, we mentioned the age. He's getting up there a little bit. He'll turn 30, which isn't old by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's still got some good years left.
For how long he's been in the league, especially.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be interested to see, all the details of the contract when it comes out, years in that nature, and that'll tell you how many years the Saints think he has left. But Tyrann Mathieu's going to come in here rejuvenated because it felt inevitable, but one of those reasons why is because Tyrann Mathieu was pushing for this for months, interacting on social media with Saints players, including Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Cam Jordan or Demario Davis or whoever it was. They're saying, come on, let's go. And he's saying, man, praying for it or whatever like that. He wants this too. He wants that chance to come home and play in front of friends and family on the regular, play for the hometown team, be back in the state where he went to college. That kind of brings the whole journey full circle, right? Everyone knows the journey that Tyrann Mathieu's been on. This is what can bring it full circle, is him being in the black and gold. Now it's official. It felt inevitable, and he's going to be rejuvenated even more and have something to prove. He's going to go out there and just play hard every single snap. Not that he doesn't already, but you got that added incentive now.
And I feel a lot better about the season as a whole. Maybe I was being a little irrational basing that on one signing, but now that I know that Chris Olave will be in a Saints uniform as a rookie, now that I know Tyrann Mathieu will be in a Saints uniform, just based on those two guys, I feel a lot better about the season. And as we transition into the sports gambling portion of this segment, it's interesting to me that the Chiefs win total most recently was set at 11. The Saints right now is set at 8. I feel really good about the Saints winning at least 8 games, especially when you consider there's 17 games now. But I'm curious to see what will happen to that Kansas City win total. And I kind of have a lot of questions about the Chiefs. It's been a weird offseason there, man. When you think about it, they trade Tyreek Hill away to Florida. Now they let Tyrann Mathieu go, despite the fact that they maybe could have kept him. If you look at their cap situation and you look at his production, they definitely would have wanted to keep him, you would think. But a lot of attrition with the Kansas City Chiefs, who will be without some core players. I know they tried to get some other guys, Marquez Valdes-Scantling and others, to try to fill the cracks, but Kansas City, I do not feel as good about them as a team going into this season. And the Saints, on the opposite spectrum, I feel much better about New Orleans at the present moment.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see much movement on their win total because number 15 is still there, and he's pretty darn good. And yes, he's as big of a part of it being at 11 as anything. But everything that you just said should impact your bet on them, whether you think they'll go over or under. They still have plenty of weapons offensively for Patrick Mahomes to throw to. But let's be honest, the defense for the Chiefs last year, it wasn't that great to begin with. We talked about it almost ad nauseum on this show during our pick segments in the fall, where we would just constantly fade the Chiefs because their defense was atrocious. They were the worst. They were the worst defense in the NFL.
That against the spread run.
Oh, God, it was just very, very lucrative for many. I think I bet against the Chiefs like 6-7 weeks in a row on this show. But anyway, and it was due because then, literally, statistically, they had the worst defense in the NFL. Now, they got better and they made their run, obviously, into the playoffs, and we know how that went about. But you did lose pieces off of that defense already. They supplemented a little bit. We'll see. That is going to be interesting to see. But, yeah, go there. But you look at the Saints, man, and we got a little bit of time left here. Talk about the win total, still sitting at 8. And, just with the draft, look, we kind of had this conversation on was it Wednesday? I think it was last Wednesday, right before the draft, about the Saints win total sitting there at 8. And look, it's gonna, you'll have a different feeling after the draft. I thought even going into the draft, over 8 is a fair bet to make on this team, just because they have bolstered already through free agency and whatnot, and they had more up their sleeve. And depending on how it could come out in the draft, Chris Olave is a phenomenal pick. We talked about that on Friday, but that gives you your counter to Michael Thomas, your complement to Michael Thomas, I should say. We both like the Trevor Penning pick and think if he comes in and is the guy they expect him to be, a starter right from day one, you like your offensive line left from right, which has been one of the best offensive lines in the league, and only replacing one piece of that, who, to be fair, Ron Armstead missed a lot of time. You've already had time without him out there. It's still one of the better offensive lines in the league. You get Jameis Winston back. Now you add Tyrann Mathieu into that secondary, man. Over 8 seems almost like a steal right now with the New Orleans Saints.
Right, like I said, right now I would agree with you, but going into the draft, maybe I was just a little traumatized, or potentially thinking I was going to be traumatized about the post-Sean Payton era, because losing a head coach that's been that successful a year after you lost Drew Brees, he had just done such a good job for such a long time, so you had a lot of questions. But what I will say about Dennis Allen is that I really like how he's kind of doing things his own way. Like, the draft strategy seemed to be a little bit unconventional. They went and got their guy. They made that trade to get Chris Olave. Now you're investing highly in Tyrann Mathieu, an LSU guy, which the Saints didn't sign too many of those during the Sean Payton era. Maybe that's a trend that's reversing. I like that Dennis Allen is doing things in the vision of Dennis Allen. And like you said, this is going to be a team that wins games on its defense. Offensively, there's still some questions. Alvin Kamara, the need at running back behind him, what you're going to do at tight end. But defensively, this was one of the better groups from last season. You're now keeping the defensive coordinator who's elevated the head coach, and you were worried about the safety situation, but just in a vacuum, replacing Malcolm Jenkins, Marcus Williams with Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, with everything else you have, plus the young talent developing, which we haven't even talked about, Werner, Adebo, others. This has the makings to be an elite defense. There's no reason it should not be. Again, offensively, some questions, but if the win total is 8 in a somewhat weak NFC South, I feel really good about the Saints getting there today.
I think you still see them do more at running back. Because, look, I know Dennis Allen was asked after the draft if they liked the depth at running back, and he said, yeah, we like our depth there. I personally don't like your depth there. Alvin Kamara is going to miss time. We all know that, and because of the arrest, and whenever the court date happens, it's been pushed back and all that. Whenever that does happen, he'll miss time, and we know that. Mark Ingram, while he produced really well for you last year, is getting older, and Tony Jones Jr. shined in the preseason, but then got hurt. You didn't really see much of him. Dwayne Washington's a special teams player. They need more there, and that was one of the bigger surprises for me, is that they didn't draft a running back. I thought maybe when you saw that run on running back in the third, I think it was the 3rd round, or might have been the 4th round, that you might see the Saints maybe trade back in. I mean, they like to trade up down there in New Orleans. They didn't do that. And I think another surprise for me out of the draft would have been that they didn't draft a quarterback. Actually, I thought they'd take a flyer on somebody late, and I think that shows a great confidence in Jameis Winston, maybe even Ian Book to some extent as well, that they didn't take another flyer there.
It's good for Jameis' confidence.
Yeah, but for me, the biggest surprise was that they did not draft a running back. But they got just about everything else that you thought they would, right? They got the tackle. They got the wide receiver. They got a defensive tackle. Interior defensive line was a spot here, and they got him late in the draft, but they got that guy. You still have Peyton Turner coming back, who's versatile enough to play inside and outside. So running back would have been the biggest surprise for me, and I still think they do make some type of move there going forward. I know they've already made some, but I think you could see something maybe in free agency there.
That would not surprise me at all. But we do know that the Saints have a new safety on their team. That is Tyrann Mathieu. And before we go to break, I told you this before the show. This is kind of cool personally for me, because the first season I did the play-by-play in Spanish, LSU football, 2012. That was supposed to be Matthew's junior year.
Yeah.
That was the year he was kicked out. And at the time, he was my favorite player. He's still one of my all-time favorite players. And 18-year-old Mario was really bummed out that he wasn't going to get to broadcast Tyrann Mathieu's games. But now 27-year-old Mario will get to call his games, and he'll get to do it when Tyrann Mathieu's wearing the black and gold. And I, personally, very pumped up about that.
Full circle, man. That's the thing about it, right? It brings the entire journey full circle, and hammer those over. Hammer the over. 8 wins. Get out of here. Saints. You have a 10, 12 win regular season. It's going to happen.